Ah, silence. That exquisite, unbearable quiet that echoes louder than 1,000 arguments. It's the theme of our tale today. What is an avoidance experience during no contact? And I assure you, it's not nearly as clean or calculated as it might appear from the outside. You may believe the avoidant is unbothered, cold even, reclining on some emotional chaise lounge, untouched by the absence of you. Ah, but let me take you inside, behind the curtain of the stoic gaze, and into the hidden theater where the avoidant dances with ghosts. Now, imagine a man in a library, oak-paneled, dust-draped, not a soul in sight. The air is still. He runs a finger along the spines of old volumes he never opens. That's the inner world of an avoidant during no contact, a place curated for solitude. But don't be fooled. Solitude is not peace. It's merely order without company. The avoidant, he's not thinking in a straight line, you see. Emotions are not welcomed like guests. They are burglars creeping through the back door. They arrive late at night, when the avoidant's practiced distractions have grown weary, when there's no one left to pretend for. He tells himself he's fine. Of course I'm fine, he says aloud, usually to the dog, the fridge, the mirror. That mantra echoes through the empty rooms, and on the surface, it works. For a while. But the mind is a curious creature. It files nothing away neatly. Instead, it leaves little reminders. Half a toothbrush, a song on the radio, a peculiar way someone says good night. These become tripwires, and when one snaps, the whole scaffolding rattles. Now, to understand the avoidant, you must understand their relationship with intimacy. It's not that they don't want it. No. It's that closeness has always been dangerous, like fire, lovely from a distance, lethal up close. So when love arrives, they step forward with one foot and back with the other. They offer connection like a gift wrapped in layers of tape. And if you peel too quickly, well, they panic. And when it all collapses and you say, "That's it, I'm done," you go silent. That's when the avoidant begins their strange ritual. They do not chase. Oh no, that would be too raw, too revealing. They retreat further inward. They catalogue your absence. They tell themselves it's better this way. Safer, but in truth they are stalling. Because they know, on some level, that reaching out means exposure, vulnerability, an impossible price. So what do? They intellectualize. Ah yes, the avoidant loves a good theory. They'll read about attachment styles, make observations. Yes, she was clearly anxious, preoccupied, they'll mutter with smug detachment, ignoring the pulse in their chest. It's easier to label you than to miss you. Time passes. They grow confident, detached. This is who I am, they think. I simply require space. But space has a way of becoming a void, doesn't it? And the avoidant begins to hear the echo of your laughter in strange places. The spice aisle, an empty bus stop, a half-finished novel on the bedside table. And that's when the fantasy begins. Oh yes, the idealized version of you. You see, the avoidant doesn't remember the messy bits. Not yet. They remember your warmth, your steadiness, the way you tried. And because they are so rarely honest with themselves, this version of you, untainted by actual conflict, becomes a haunting. They won't message you, of course. That would suggest need. Need is shameful, but they'll watch. Quietly. Social media, mutual friends, the digital crumbs you leave behind. And every post of yours is a message, whether you intended it or not. Is she still waiting? Has he moved on? If you appear happy, they'll tell themselves you never cared. If you appear sad, they'll say, "See? This is why we don't get close." Now, I knew a man once, Let's call him Edward. Fine name, Edward. He was the classic avoidant, loved his garden more than his girlfriend. She left one day, finally tired of asking for more than he could give. She went silent. No calls, no notes. And for months, Edward was resolute. He'd say, she needed too much. But I'd catch him looking at her old teacup on the shelf, unmoved, yet refusing to pack it away. He'd mow the lawn twice a week, said it helped him think. But I suspect he hoped she might just walk by. One day, he told me, I think I was wrong. About what? He stared at the teacup. About what she needed. I think she just needed me to stay. You see, no contact doesn't awaken an avoidant the way you might expect. It doesn't produce instant regret. It produces silence first, then stubbornness, then discomfort. Then, if there's hope, if the avoidant hasn't buried themselves entirely, comes the revelation. Maybe I pushed away the very thing I longed for. But this awakening, if it arrives, is a slow burn. And often, it comes too late. Because by the time the avoidant is ready to come forward, the other has already crossed an ocean of growth. They've learned to stop begging at closed doors. They've learned that love isn't earned by disappearing acts. And that is the tragedy of the avoidant. Not the absence of feeling, but the delay in expressing it. They live in a house where all the clocks run 5 minutes slow. By the time they arrive, the train has gone. So what is an avoidance experience during no contact? It is not peace. It is not power. It is a muted grief, tightly folded and tucked in a drawer. It is the stubborn maintenance of a fortress, even as the roof begins to leak. It is the long, slow realization that solitude without love is not freedom. It is exile. And still, there is hope. For the avoidant willing to step out, to risk the warmth of another's fire, for the one brave enough to admit, I miss you without the armor, there is a path forward. Not by returning to old patterns, but by learning a new dance. One where closeness doesn't mean collapse. One where silence is replaced with presence. But make no mistake, this takes more than time. It takes truth. And that is the one thing the avoidant fears more than anything. Because truth brings light. And in that light, the stories we tell ourselves start to melt. So if you're the one waiting, don't. Live. Grow. Shine brightly in your own corner of the world. If they find their way back, let it be to you, not the shadow of who you were. And if you're the avoidant, perhaps it's time to ask, what did I fear more, losing them or being known? Because in the end, it's not no contact that defines the avoidance journey. It's what they do with the silence.
If you believe this video might help someone dear to you, share it with them. A small gesture on your part could mean the world to a friend in need.